Yeah, this is the second time I did that today. Anyway, what's going on? I was just talking and commenting about the only way that you can see who has the first comment is if you are the one that's hosting the stream, which is me. So, yeah, Kai had the first comment today. You can only tell if you're logged in personally when you get there. So, there is a one comment above Econics says, "Hey, homies." So, yeah, I keep muting myself early on streams, and I totally forget to unmute myself when Josh isn't here to tell me that. So, yeah, that is always fun. What's good, you guys? We are hanging out. We are talking about FanDuel and DraftKings Thursday night football. It's a rematch of the 2019 College Football Championship. Trevor Lawrence versus Joe Burrow. Going to be Trevor Lawrence's first primetime game. What better way to do it than going up against Joe Burrow's Cincinnati Bengals? This one's, I know that a lot of people are down on this game. A lot of people are down on this game, and I like it a lot. I think it's a good one. I think it's going to be a fun way to enjoy Thursday night and prepare for week 4. So I'm pumped. Yeah, let's get some takedowns tonight. What's going on, guys? Hello, everybody. This is the second stream of the day for me, so I'm feeling locked in. We're feeling locked in this NFL season, right? 10 wins in a row. That feels pretty good. After losing the main slates on the first 2 weeks of the FanDuel season, we came back very strong, 10-0 since last Sunday, and looking to make it 12-0 tonight. The Showdown single game slates have been very, very good to us this year so far. Outside of we've only had 2 losses the entire time. So the Raiders and Ravens game was one of them, and then the Chiefs Ravens game was the other. So I can't seem to get Lamar Jackson quite right just yet, but we don't have to worry about that tonight. So I am pumped and looking to make this thing uh, another win. So John says I keep trying to type Mixon and it autocorrects to Nixon. Yeah, I've had that a few times myself. It's kind of funny how the iPhone does that. You just type Mixon enough, and you know that you're not a fantasy football freak. What's going on, Teddy? Yeah, I agree. Molten lava. I agree. Let's get some takedowns tonight. Are you guys enjoying the single game showdown format? I feel like a lot of people only play the main slate. And while I try to preach as much as I can to play single game showdown, people still either refuse to do it, maybe they don't want to do it, maybe they don't want to play as much. Whatever it is, maybe they're busy during the week, who knows? But for those of you who are sticking around and hanging out and playing these showdown single game slates, they're a huge boost to your bankroll, man. These things are, you could argue, have more edge on them than the main slates do. So that's exactly how I profit as much as I do during the season. Only question: who scored a touchdown on FanDuel below 6,900? Yeah, we'll get there. We'll get there. I promise. Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Yeah, we've been on fire for the single game stuff. I feel like RotoRadar Nation in general has a huge edge on the field when it comes to single game slates and showdown slates. Corn does it all year. He had 2 takedowns the other day in one day, and he's going to continue to do that for the playoffs. You guys are going to see some massive success if you are on his playoff package. But yeah, in terms of NFL, I mean, there are I know that it differs every now and then, and we're going to be playing single game of showdown on Thanksgiving, and when we do it for Thursday night football, Christmas, and then when it changes to Saturday games and Sunday games for the playoffs down the stretch, we're going to be doing that as well. Lots of edge down the line, and we have over, if I'm doing the math correctly, it's over 60 slates where we get to do this kind of format. I'm pretty pumped about it, and I think again, while the main slates will always have edge, these contests definitely do. A lot of times, people like we just saw this the other night for the Monday Night Football game. A lot of people just like to punch in optimizers and just roll it out, and they don't do anything else with it. And this is probably going to be the same case. And there's a really good case to be made for fading one of the quarterbacks tonight. So without further ado, we are going to go ahead and talk about that. Yeah, John. Good point. I forgot about this even though I brought it up myself earlier in the week. They're going to be having a Monday night wildcard game, which is awesome. So this is going to be the first time where they have 3 day slates. I don't think we've ever had a 3 day slate. That's actually been, something, well, for sure not playoffs, but 3 game slates in terms of DFS for NFL. So let's get after it. Let's do it. And let's check out FanDuel first. Okay. So obviously the big thing here that is noted in yellow, I'm going to keep that up there for a little while as FanDuel has alerted us that instead of rolling out Josh Lambo, they are going to be adding kicker Matthew Wright to the player pool. I actually did not see what his price tag was, but if I had to guess, they probably just replaced the guys. Yeah, I would put it. Yeah, I mean it was smart of them to put him at 9,000. That's fine. Uh, Yeah, so that's interesting news. Outside of that, this slate is very, very straightforward because there are not a lot of players that have fantasy relevance. I mean, I can count on one hand, if not half of my second hand, the amount of guys that are actually in play tonight. So we're probably going to have a little bit of a shorter stream just because there's only so much we can do with it. But this is also a good slate to get some tournament exposure too. If you're playing 3 to 5, maybe 10, maybe 20 lineups, maybe even maxing it out. So there are a lot of ways that you can mix and match. FanDuel I mean, with the format in general, there's going to be less ways to mix and match than on DraftKings, which we will get to. We'll make sure to go about half, probably a half hour or so, maybe 35, 40 minutes on the FanDuel side of things, and then we'll go for the additional half hour, 40 minutes on the DraftKings Showdown side of things. But first of all, let's just break this thing down. I mean, so Cincinnati is a touchdown favorite. I had to correct myself, and I looked and saw my article earlier from yesterday, and I wanted to correct myself from the morning stream and say that the stat about the home favorite touchdown thing for Cincy was incorrect, but the actual year, so the last time that the Bengals were more than a touchdown favorite or even a touchdown favorite was early in the year in 2017. So it wasn't 2013, it was 2017. And while that's still, I mean, obviously 2017 is closer, but not being a touchdown home favorite for 4 years is quite a bit of time. So they are touchdown favorites here. The one stat that I did want to bring up that I talked about on the morning after that still applies here is that out of all the home favorites that are more than a touchdown from the year 2000 to the year 2021, if you were a home favorite more than 7 points, you only covered 48% of the time. So, not necessarily the most reliable stat in the world. Uh, I say all that and really doesn't matter because Joe Burrow is the clear number one play on FanDuel. It's really not even a question in cash games. I know that he hasn't showed the elite upside that we saw from him last season in terms of certain game scripts where he's been able to hit 25 plus points on FanDuel. He has been very consistent in the pocket so far this season. The accuracy numbers have been there. He has not had to pass very much at all. The reason that he threw for 30 pass attempts against Chicago was because they were down bad. He threw 3 picks in that game. He only threw 18 times against Pittsburgh last week, which I mean is not great, but he was very efficient with the completions at 14. So getting 3 passing touchdowns in 14 pass completions is very, very impressive for Burrow. The rushing numbers aren't going to be there to start off the season. We knew that already. So at the end of the day, I'm not too concerned about Burrow. I think that you can use him in any format. DraftKings, however, he's going to come in as the MVP, the most popular MVP play. And I do not think that you need to go there on DraftKings. I think that using one of his weapons, whether it be Jamar Chase, Tyler Boyd, And the one guy that we continue to forget to talk about, Joe Mixon. Those three are going to be my favorite captain plays, and I think Joe Mixon honestly runs away with it, and he has the actual possibility of being my MVP play on FanDuel. I know that this is obvious. Joe Burrow is probably going to garner a lot of ownership at MVP, but Joe Mixon is the guy that I actually really want to talk about. I think that this guy has the ability to be an MVP type play tonight for a lot of reasons. The first reason that's very encouraging, the rush attempts have been there for Mixon. I know they've gone down in every single matchup, but it's all about game script, right? You take a look at this Minnesota game. That was a shootout type approach. The Bengals probably wanted to ease Joe Burrow in that week one game and run the ball heavily with Mixon there. Healthy 4 targets out of the backfield is what I like to see from him. 20 rushing attempts in a negative game script against Chicago, which is probably the most important thing to note here. He had 20 rush attempts, 22 or 21 total touches in that spot. Obviously, touchdown regression is coming for Mixon. The variance has not been good for that so far, but I do expect him to have severe regression to the mean, and Joe Mixon should be able to get in the end zone once today, if not twice, if not even 3 times. I think that the upside for him is anywhere from 22 to 25 touches with the upside of 3 touchdowns. So Mixon, like I said, is an elite play tonight. Jacksonville's defense is horrendous. They should be able to establish the run here, and being the home favorite, I think Mixon has the ability to be the leading fantasy scorer tonight. So a lot of people are agreeing with me here. Uh, yeah, I think we're getting a little bit too ahead of ourselves, guys. Like I'm trying to start from the ground up here. I think a lot of people. We'll touch on all those opinions in a little bit, but I agree. Mixon should be considered as your MVP. I don't think I would really worry about going the MVP route for any of the Jacksonville Jaguars on today's slate for FanDuel. On DraftKings, you can obviously make your captain play a numerous amount of players, and we'll get there. We're going to be talking about DraftKings here at the later part of the stream. So let's go ahead and get to the chat. Mixon MVP, Burrow MVP for sure. Yep. Mixon should be MVP. Smashes and spots are Cincy's favor, which is rare. Agreed. It doesn't happen very often. Again, touchdown favorites for the first time since 2017. Burrow is a bad GPP MVP, like him at cash. Yeah, I can agree with both. I don't think you should be playing Burrow at your. If I were to have one GPP lineup, I would suggest not having Burrow at your MVP spot. However, you can get different with a bunch of things, and you can throw him at your MVP and GPPs all you want if you're playing multiple lineups or maxing it out. Yes, okay. I think we're all in agreement here. And John, you auto-corrected Mixon again to Nixon. Can't wait to see that a little bit more on today's stream. All right. So, a few things we can do here. I'm going to go ahead and let the chat comment on some game scripts that you want me to throw around, and you can post them in the chat. I'll get to them as we go on here. Want to cover the rest of this slate first before we do that, so that I'll let the chat roll those comments in, and we can talk the rest of this slate. You have a little bit lower pricing for quarterbacks here. Usually the underdog quarterback is around 15K, while the favorite quarterback is usually anywhere from 16 to as high as 17 or 18, like we've seen in the past from guys like Kyler, Mahomes, Lamar, all those guys. So Burrow and Lawrence combined for 29,500 on the slate, which leaves you with over half of your money. Usually this is the way this works, but we're actually on the cheaper side of things this week, or this game, I should say. And they allow you to get 30,500 in there. And the problem with this slate, like I said, is I can count the amount of players on probably 7 of my fingers that are actually in play that are viable for fantasy. You have the 2 quarterbacks obviously up top. Joe Mixon, like I said, is an elite play at 14K. You take a step down 2,000, like 1,500 to get to Jamar Chase. who has been unbelievable through 4 games. Again, I can't stress enough how many L's I'm going to take this year on Jamar Chase proving me wrong. The one thing that I will say is while this is fantastic, these sections right here, these are fantastic. This is really good. This is interesting. The one thing that I want to point out is that the outcomes have been there for Jamar Chase, but the efficiency is through the roof, like through the roof skyrocket so far through 3 games. Can we expect him to keep this up in this fashion? Over an 18-week season, the answer is no. Against Jacksonville, different story, right? Different story. So Jamar Chase, while regression is coming for him sharply in the opposite direction in accordance to touchdowns, he will certainly be in play tonight. Still has the ability to have 2 receiving touchdowns. I wish that this number was higher last week, and I know that they didn't have to pass that much against Pittsburgh because they were either leading or Pittsburgh was just making mistakes and they were just getting the ball in great field position. I wish that this number was higher with uh, Higgins out, but it is what it is. You got to take it and run with it. So maybe Jamar Chase gets in that 5 to 7 target range, but Boyd is the target monster if we are to pick one guy or the other in this situation. Again, like I said, T. Higgins is going to miss again this week. So guys like Jamar Chase, guys like Joe Mixon, guys like Tyler Boyd sitting here at 10K are all fantastic options against Jacksonville. You would expect that this number would be higher for Tyler Boyd too from last week. We saw we played him on DraftKings last week. For those of you who played the content for last Sunday, I had Tyler Boyd as a top 5 receiver at his price point, or points per dollar, I should say. On DraftKings, that definitely paid off for you. On FanDuel, you kind of want a little bit more, right? Like 4 for 36 and a touchdown is fine. But at the end of the day, if you knew that Higgins was out against Pittsburgh, you probably wanted more. And Tyler Boyd has a knack and history of beating the Steelers tremendously in DFS. So hopefully we see a little bit more targets from both of those guys. As obviously Joe Burrow only had to throw the ball 18 times against Pittsburgh last week. I expect him to throw the ball anywhere from 23 to 28 times tonight, and they should be using a lot of Mixon. So I think we see a little bit of an uptick for those guys in terms of targets. And then on the other side, that's kind of where everything kind of ends for Cincy for me. We can talk about the guys that are dumpster dive plays below 9K, but I want to get to the Jacksonville side of things first. Trevor Lawrence, coming in at 14,500, has put up back-to-back performances of less than 10 FanDuel points. The one time that he went over was that Week 1 game against Houston where he threw the ball 51 times. I do not expect that to happen again this season. I think that was a lot to do with just game script, and honestly, he was I would say, incredibly inefficient with his throws that game. He threw 3 interceptions and threw for less than 60%, if I'm doing the quick math there. So 13 follows it up with 33 and 34 pass attempts in week 2 and 3 against Denver and Arizona. Denver defense, definitely understand why he struggled there. Arizona defense, I felt like they gave Jacksonville a little bit too much credit in week 3. That defense is a little bit shaky. I think that the Bengals actually are a step up. This is going to be contrarian, so feel free to comment this in the chat. But I think that I can make a statement that the Cincinnati Bengals defense is a tad bit better than the Arizona Cardinals defense. Not saying specific players, just saying through 3 games, you can make an argument that Cincy's defense is better. Trevor Lawrence has, I'm going to add this up and it's a lot, so quick math here, 3, 2, 2, and 2 turnovers. That is 4, 6, that's 9 turnovers through 3 games. 9 turnovers through 3 games for Lawrence. Can we count on that tonight? No, but at the same time, I think that you can kind of pencil him in for 1 or 2 turnovers, right? So for me, this is about comparing Trevor Lawrence to guys like Joe Mixon and Jamar Chase. most notably Joe Mixon. Mixon has had two games that have been better than Trevor Lawrence, and obviously you would hope that. And I know this game they were down by, I think they were down like 17-3, 20-3, but he still got 21 touches. So uh, for me, it's Joe Mixon versus Trevor Lawrence tonight. That's the biggest argument. Right now, I lean with Mixon, and I think that you can make a case, a very good case, to fade Trevor Lawrence on Thursday Night Football in his first primetime game. He's also, and this is important, coming off of a short week where they lost to Arizona and they have to travel and they have to do a bunch of stuff. Now, Lawrence is probably used to that, but at the same time, I think this is a great spot to buy in on the fact that you can get Mixon for $500 cheaper and play him as a home favorite. Because again, like Flash said, he is very, very good historically when Cincinnati is a favorite, which doesn't happen often. D-line's definitely better. Last year they had a few injuries. Secondary's playing a little over their head. They certainly are. I agree. I mean, we can make, I don't know, you can say that the Bengals haven't faced nearly enough competition yet. I think that their wins against Minnesota and Pittsburgh were definitely step ups. The Bears game, I'm not sure what happened. I just think that was just a bad game plan by Cincinnati. So I think that they bounce back here. I think that they can, like I said on the morning stream, I think that they can be 3-1 at the end of week 4 and stand atop of the AFC North, especially with the matchups that the rest of the division has. Pittsburgh has Green Bay in Wisconsin. The Ravens go to Denver to take on the undefeated Broncos, which is a tough matchup and a tough place to play. And then the Browns play the Minnesota Vikings in Minnesota, which should be a shootout type scenario. So there's a real chance the other teams in the AFC North lose, and the Bengals sit atop the North after 4 weeks. Since he's faced two mobile QBs, yeah, we can play the mobile QB game. I mean, I understand. That's totally acceptable. They're playing another immobile QB tonight. You could say Lawrence has some wheels. Has he used them? No. He did a little bit last week. But again, if you're throwing the ball 34 times and rushing 6 times and recording 4 turnovers, that's not going to win you many DFS games. Anyway, speaking more on the weapons for Jacksonville, and then we'll start getting into these questions. James Robinson actually showed up last week, came to life. He got the touches that we've been looking for, that we kind of thought that were going to happen coming into the year after the ETN injury. 15 rush attempts and was very efficient with those rush attempts. I mean, 88 yards is still 88 yards. I'm not going to complain about that. He did lose a fumble, got the rushing touchdown. The thing that I want to highlight is that he was very efficient in the passing game, which is something that we didn't see as much in the previous two matchups. Kind of thought that Carlos Hyde was going to step in and be that troll monster for the Jacksonville Jaguars. But James Robinson comes in off of a 21 touch game going up against Cincinnati. He's certainly in play. I'm not going to rule him out for tonight's game. Marvin Jones, arguably not arguably, he is the most consistent receiver on this team. DJ Chark, we can talk about him next, but let's just do Marvin Jones first. Almost double-digit targets in every single game. You can tell he's the favorite guy that Lawrence wants to go to as a safety blanket option. Got in the end zone the first 2 weeks, did not get in the end zone that third week against Arizona. Yeah, I mean, Marvin Jones, 11.5 is a very solid price tag. Would not fault you for going this route as a captain on DraftKings if we're expecting them to come from behind and throw for the majority of the second half. DJ Chark sitting at 10.5. He got into the end zone 2 of 3 weeks, including last week. Has been not as efficient with his targets, but DJ Chark's never really a guy that's going to be efficient with his targets, right? He's always going to be a guy that has a little bit higher ADOT than the rest of the team and goes for those big plays, especially when they get to that 30 to 35 yard range in their opponent's territory. Did Jared just say something almost nice about Marvin Jones? Yeah, that was probably as nice as I could have said it, Kai. I did play him in back-to-back weeks 1 and 2 on DraftKings, and that's probably the highlight of Marvin Jones this season in terms of Jared's DFS career. 12 targets in week 1, obviously because of Trevor Lawrence's 51 pass attempts, and then kind of has gone down to the normal range that we would have normally seen. Completely imploded against Denver, to be expected, tough secondary. Arizona, like I said, a little bit more suspect. Still managed at 349 and 1. I think that if anybody, I would choose Marvin Jones and just pay the extra 1,000. I'm not worried about money tonight at all, so you can kind of do whatever you want. But you do have to make some fade calls, and I think that Lawrence is a fade call, and you kind of have to decide whether or not you want to run with the James Robinson performance from last week, or if you want to play the game script that we think is going to happen and roster one of these Marvin Jones or DJ Chark plays. The guy that I also want to make sure I include is Leviska Chanel in this conversation. We talked about him trying to be that favorite target for Trevor Lawrence. It looked like it was in the preseason. However, they are just not utilizing him the way that I thought that they would. He's been efficient with his touches in weeks 1 and 3, but if you're getting screen passes at the line of scrimmage for 2 for -3, like that's not going to do you anything. I don't understand some of this. Leviska is definitely a head scratcher tonight. I think I'm going to stay away personally, but it makes sense if you want to roster him in tournaments where you have some Jacksonville passing exposure. McPherson, we talked about on the morning stream. They haven't really needed him necessarily for the field goals. He came up clutch in week 1. Could be a spot where you're just looking for raw total points in a game where you might not have as many. Like I said earlier, Josh Lambo is not going to miss this, or not going to be playing in this game. Jaguars added Matthew Wright to the player pool, so he's sitting there at 9K. Not over the hill interested with either kicker. It might be just a roster construction spot. We'll look at their prices on DraftKings, as I probably will be most interested to go with them there. Kicker's probably the most underrated position on DraftKings in terms of players that have upside. I know it's a risk and a gamble, but usually they're priced under 5K, and usually you can get the home favorite kicker or the favorite kicker in general for fairly cheap on DraftKings. Let's move down the list here. I think I covered everybody at the top. Yep. Carlos Hyde comes in at 8K as the RB2, obviously. He is definitely a conundrum. A guy that I'm going to be staying completely away from today. And I think that he's probably going to troll one of these days, right? He's going to troll and get a touchdown or 2 on the ground in place of James Robinson. Could that be tonight? Sure. But I don't really want to target a guy who's getting under 10 rush attempts and has the upside of maybe like 7 to 10 total touches in general. We thought that he was going to be a guy that would come in on 3rd down and act as that pass blocker / dump off safety blanket for Trevor Lawrence, but they really haven't thrown him the ball that much. James Robinson, if you remember from a couple minutes ago, had 6 targets in the last game. Carlos Hyde had 0. So I understand, like, this is sort of encouraging, I guess, and so is this, but I still can't do anything with it in this spot, especially if he's 8,000. And moving down, Dan Arnold, wouldn't expect him to play too much. He was recently acquired over the past, I think it was Monday that trade actually went through from the Panthers. By the way, the biggest trade steal of the season so far, CJ Henderson for Dan Arnold. And I know there were some picks involved there, but Jacksonville clearly lost that side of things. I don't know why. I don't know why they made that move. Was it for like is James O'Shaughnessy really that big of a priority or big of a loss where you need to go out of your way, trade your best defensive player for Dan Arnold? Who knows, man? I don't know. But yeah, Dan Arnold, for me, I'm fading tonight. He seems to be coming in, guys, as an option to be one of, I'm not going to say chalky because it's too early for that, But you end up on this 7K range a lot if you roster the top guys, and we'll go over that in a little bit. I will make sure that we check back to Dan Arnold, Jamal Agnew, and Jacob Hollister later on in the stream because we're going to be talking about them quite a bit. Joe Burrow doesn't like throwing to his tight ends. Yeah, he does not like throwing to his tight ends. CJ Uzomah, 5 targets through 3 weeks, not efficient with any of them. His best week was against Minnesota in week 1, and that was because of a fairly uh, fairly good pass completion for one of those attempts. Anyway, not going there. There's no reason. I understand the Jaguars are bad, but he's just not being used in Joe Burrow's reads. Could he end up scoring a touchdown tonight and walking into one? Sure, but GPP upside only. Down the list here, Jake Hollister. I mean, I wish that they would use this dude more. He's easily the most athletic tight end on the team. But, he's just been inefficient through the first couple weeks here. Tyron Johnson doesn't scream anything off the page to me. None of these guys, look at these guys' FanDuel points per game totals. Less than 1, 1, 2, 1, 1, 2. Chris Manhertz had one good game. He scored a touchdown in week 1, and then he didn't have any receptions the rest of the season. So, 1 reception all season, ended in a touchdown. That's why his average is 4.3. 0, 1, 3, 0, 1, 0, 0, 1, 2, 0, 2. Yeah, so there's nothing here, guys. Like, there's nothing. This slate is so top heavy. Like I said, there's only like less than 10 guys in play. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. You could maybe count one of these guys in here at the bottom. 11 to 12 guys in play. Just doesn't seem to do much for me. The one guy that makes sense that could fit into this, but hasn't yet, is Auden Tate. And we've used him a lot in DFS over the past 3-4 years when the Bengals start to fall apart on offense in relation to their injury bug. If Tyler Boyd goes down, last year AJ Green went down. They had a lot of issues with John Ross. They had a lot of issues with T. Higgins. Joe Mixon was struggling with injury. So when all that came and all that was circling around, Auden Tate was the guy who was a converted tight end to wide receiver who stepped in and was able to be that big body for Joe Burrow. Hasn't come to fruition yet this season. It makes sense here if you want to go there for tournaments. I hope that he's actually able to see the field more. He was only on the field for less than 60% of the snaps last week. Did not run too many routes. He is a converted tight end. He's a very good blocker as well. So they may be using him that way. The Bengals don't run too much two tight end sets, so I don't see myself going there necessarily. They don't really run too many 4 wide receiver sets either. They're a team that likes to stay single back kind of formation with 2 wide receivers as tight end and Joe Mixon back there in the backfield. So Auden Tate would be a guy you could take a dart on, but again, he maybe cracks my player pool. We'll see what his price is on DraftKings. If it's under 3K, then I have interest here. If not, then it is what it is. And then obviously, the Mike Thomas that's actually playing in the league is sitting there at 5.5 too. Might have missed it. Could you take a chance on Carlos Hyde, get a cheap option in there? It makes sense from a construction standpoint if you want to, because you're going to end up in this range most likely with your picks. It's kind of hard to get to the cheapest guy being a kicker at 9K. You might have to take a shot on Chanel, maybe have to take a shot on Carlos Hyde. I just wish that the touches were there more. I wish that he had the upside of 10 to 12, maybe 10, maybe some like 12. 15 is asking a lot, so 10 to 12 would be the range I'd be looking for him. If he gets you 6 points at this range, that's probably a dub on this slate because Chenault hasn't proven that he can get that much, and we don't really know how many points the Jacksonville Jaguars are going to put up on the board. So Hyde might be a guy that you can look at the bottom, but again, I think it's pretty scary. So you're going to have to take a scary proposition somewhere on this slate just because we don't have that option. Monday's scary option, as Kai knows, because we talked about this quite a bit in DM before, I posted final content was Zach Ertz at 6K. He kind of luck boxed into a garbage time touchdown, but at the same time, we noted that the Dallas Cowboys gave up a lot of targets to the opposing tight ends through the first 2 weeks. So that seemed to work. Maybe we'll find another one of those nuggets on today's slate. If I find that nugget, I probably won't be sharing that here because this is free, and I would like to share a lot of that content for behind the paywall tonight. Robinson or Jones Jr.? That's a really good question. If I had to side with one or the other right now, it would be Marvin Jones because of the game script that I think this game's going to have. I think that Cincinnati's able to control the clock, run the ball the way they want to, put some points up on the board early, and Jacksonville could be staring down a 14-0 or 17-7 type of game in the second half, and that just tells me that Marvin Jones is going to get just more opportunity than James Robinson will on the ground. Feels like a balanced build kind of night. Yeah, I mean, so the way that I've been going about it, like I said, you're kind of ending up in this 7 to 8K range here on FanDuel, and I would like it to not be that way. But let's say, so first of all, if you're rostering two quarterbacks, you certainly have to try to pay down for one of the guys below 8K because you don't want to fade these guys up here. I think that you need, so I don't want to fade Joe Mixon, but it's just for this example. If you were to go even one person in this range with Jamar Chase, that leaves you with 9,000 per, which you probably want Tyler Boyd or DJ Chark in there as well. So if you go Boyd at the very cheapest, then you end up on a guy like Carlos Hyde. Now, this isn't the way that I would really approach this, but that is what you're left with. So you're going to have to take a stab at one of these guys down here under 8K, which is, again, not ideal. Get comfortable being uncomfortable. Highly agree with that, Will. That's exactly how you're going to try to approach tonight's game. This game kind of feels like, I always preach that you can play cash on single games all the time and have no problems worrying about it. You shouldn't be worrying about that tonight either, but this definitely feels like sort of a tournament type of slate where you try to take some massive shots on guys that are under that 9K price tag and just hope that you hit one touchdown on one of them because you only need for any of these guys down here, the Dan Arnolds, the Agnews, the Hollisters, all of these guys, they only require one big play for them to put you at the top of the leaderboards. So, yep, I think that get comfortable with being uncomfortable is the correct way to approach the slate on FanDuel. On DraftKings, I highly disagree. I think that you'll be able to roster Chase, Boyd, Mixon, any of those guys at your captain spot and feel really good about the rest of your lineups. So with that being said, let's go into some game theory here. I want you guys to give me some game scripts that I can plug in here and we can talk through and make some tournament lineups. None of these are going to be cash game lineups. They're all going to be tournaments. So let's start it out. Let's go with the first one here, and I know this is a question, so it's not a strategy, but we can talk about it and do it. Could you fade both QBs in a tournament? You would need tremendous performances from both of the running backs in this game, which is not out of the realm of possibilities. So for this example, let's do this. This leaves us with 11,300 per player, and obviously it's not going to be not going to look great on paper for those of you who are used to playing cash games, but in tournaments, trying to expand the minds of everybody in here who is so used to playing the cash game content and get used to being in uncomfortable situations when you look at things like this. So looking at that, you would expect Joe Mixon to probably get 2 touchdowns on the ground. James Robinson would probably have to follow suit with a big game with that 2 touchdown performance as well. In this situation, I would want a kicker from the favorite team, as we knew that they would probably get a lot of points from Mixon on the ground, including a couple touchdowns. You would also expect, if we're not going Joe Burrow, for them to stall out on a couple drives or several drives in that and McPherson would have to step in and kick some field goals. They haven't done that too much this year, but that would be a definite spot where you'd want to lock in a guy that gives you leverage off of the offensive pieces of Joe Burrow and his receivers. Again, you don't have to go with Chase or Boyd, but given the raw nature of points on this slate and the fact that we're starved for fantasy production, you're going to have to choose one of them. I'm going to go with Tyler Boyd because I think that you need him in order to. He's probably going to be the chains and the down and distance kind of guy. So Boyd could go 7 for 100 and not get in the end zone and still put up a decent game for you. And on this slate, that one more thing I want to bring up specifically, you don't have to spend money. You don't have to spend money. You can do whatever you want, and you don't have to spend money. So I think that a guy like Marvin Jones, who's probably going to get more receptions, would be a guy that we'd plug in there to finish this thing off. Now, you're leaving 3K on the table, but you're only fading one guy if you're not playing these two quarterbacks in Jamar Chase, who is less likely to be that reception hog and get you those raw fantasy points. So this is obviously not sexy by any means from a cash game perspective, but the game script of both running backs having really good games, the kicker being on the field for possible drive endings when, I expect Cincy to drive probably 5 or 6 times in Jacksonville in the red zone, if not their territory. So McPherson should get a lot of looks today if Jacksonville's third down defense is able to stop them. So yeah, I mean, you can go this route. I don't mind it. Again, you don't have to spend money today. You don't have to spend all of it. Don't feel like you have to. Don't feel like if you're in this spot when you're building personal lineups, like that you have to pay up for Trevor Lawrence, because the answer is you don't. And I don't think that many people do this, by the way. I think this is very, very low owned. Since the onslaught, let's do it. That's honestly kind of the way that I was hoping on building this for my own lineups. So if you go since the onslaught, let's go for. Okay. This is a little bit different because if we're doing Cincy Onslaught and we don't want Joe Burrow at the top, we still need him in there because I think that the majority of their touchdowns go through the air today. So let's go with Jamar Chase having a big game. We play Joe Burrow. Let's say Mixon gets in the end zone once. And let's say we get McPherson in there for Boyd. Now, the reason I'm going McPherson over Boyd is because if Jamar Chase is MVP, then anything that Boyd does is probably going to hurt that MVP play. So I'm keeping Boyd out of this lineup, and I'm going to be rolling with Jamar Chase, Joe Burrow. If they connect on 2 touchdowns again and Boyd doesn't get in the end zone, you are set up for a huge amount of success, and that will also mean that they're up by a couple scores and probably are running Joe Mixon into the ground later on. So that leaves you with 9,000, where you have to roster a Jacksonville player. You can go with Wright, Chanel, Carlos Hyde. I'll probably just side with Chanel for this example. John wants us to do a Lawrence coming out performance. Okay, we can definitely do that. Friendly reminder, guys, that the sponsor of the 2021-22 NFL season is our friends over at betonline.ag. We covered 16 games from a traditional sports betting standpoint earlier on the stream this morning. If you missed it, go head on over to the Twitch channel after this one's over, or it's already up on YouTube for you to watch at RotoRadar-Daily Fantasy Sports. There's a few bets I like on tonight's card. I would highly suggest signing up for the DFS product at rotoradar.net. You can do that, and then you can also get my favorite bets as well as favorite prop plays for tonight as well. Lawrence coming out performance. Yeah, you guys should screenshot that one and use that one tonight. I think that's a pretty solid way to go, actually. I like that build too. Okay, let's go with the Trevor Lawrence coming out performance. Let's say that he has a big game of, I don't know, 3 touchdowns. The reason that Trevor Lawrence is going to win in an MVP spot tonight is because he has no turnovers. So that's the big thing. If he can hold on to the ball and not make bad decisions, which I think is highly unlikely, He can be that MVP tonight. Instead of putting him there, let's put Marvin Jones there and T-Law. And then with that being said, I would like to do what I can to fade DJ Chark in this build, and we'll go and plug Leviska in there and hope that he gets back on track. Maybe he gets a gadget play towards the goal line and gets that touchdown over a guy like James Robinson or Carlos Hyde. With this build already, we have 12,700 left. If Lawrence has a breakout game, that probably means that he has a lot of either garbage time or the defense for Cincinnati's leaky, which I don't think it is. Let's put Joe Mixon in there, 14K, as I think that this correlates really, really well on both sides. Let's see what we have left here. Again, you're faced with making the decision of DJ Chark, and I don't think I'm going to go there for this build specifically for many reasons, mostly because Marvin Jones is the MVP. And I would not play Matthew Wright either because the amount of there's this guy would be like, I understand if they score a touchdown, Matthew Wright can get points, but Wright is probably not going to have a great day if Lawrence has a big day in regards to touchdowns. So I would go probably with, if we're fading Burrow in this, I would go with McPherson, like we talked about earlier. The fact that you can get Mixon and McPherson, that's a fantastic correlation on tonight's slate. Hyde for a touchdown prop. If you can tell me what the touchdown prop number is on BetOnline, I will give you my opinion on it. He has not gotten in the end zone, and he has not really been looked at as the guy at the goal line so far. So I'm hesitant to go there. But if you can give me the odds, I will let you know if I like that or not. It's probably in the range of like plus 300 or so. Grandkids refused the nap. Glad you made it, Jarhead. Great to see you in here, man. Okay, we're going to be talking about FanDuel for the next, I'll give it 5 minutes. 5 minutes for FanDuel. And we'll run Astros. We'll run Astros his statement here, and then we'll go on to DraftKings Showdown. Bengals down by 21 in the third quarter. I had 2 touchdowns, and Lawrence connects to Marvin Jones for 1 touchdown. I love Astros. I love his builds. It's always extremely in depth and off the wall. All right, so it's very specific as well. I love it. Bengals down by 21 in the third quarter. Hyde gets 2 touchdowns, and Lawrence connects to Marvin Jones for 1. Okay, so you would like to have Carlos Hyde in your FanDuel MVP spot with that kind of performance. With that being said, if the Bengals are down by 21 and Marvin Jones gets 1 tutty, I could put him in there. You don't need Trevor Lawrence if he only throws 1 touchdown. So I want to make that clear. You don't need him if he only gets 1 touchdown. And we can expect and guess that Carlos Hyde gets 2 rushing touchdowns, right? So if we're focusing on the Bengals being down by 21, that means that Joe Burrow could have a massive game passing. And he hasn't had that yet, where he's been able to throw the ball 40 plus times, like we saw last season when they were just airing it out 40 to 50 times a game. So let's go Burrow here. We have enough money, I think, to get Jamar and Tyler Boyd. So let's just do that and see what it looks like. Yeah, that's a lot of money on the table. But again, it's all about, it's all about taking risks and taking shots. So this is interesting. That's all I'll say about that. It works, but it's interesting, right? I mean, you could play, if you fade Hyde, you're looking at nothing really. I mean, DJ Chark, I guess, but that was not part of the build. It's a little bit short of James Robinson. So I like this quite a bit. Plus 500 for Carlos Hyde's touchdown. You can put I would only put like a half unit on that. If you really feel confident about it, I would stay away though. Plus 500 is interesting. Let's build one that's very GPP but goes according to what Vegas expects. All right, we'll do that and then we'll go to DraftKings. If Vegas expects things, we can make Mixon the MVP here. And if we expect 46 points, that means that Bengals put up about 26 and the Jacksonville Jaguars put up about 20, which means that we will need some passing from both sides. I would like Lawrence here. Could probably fade Burrow if you think that Mixon gets in the end zone twice. Again, I love the Mixon McPherson correlation, so I'll probably run that again. DJ Chark, we haven't used him yet. Could get a spot where he gets 2 receiving touchdowns. McPherson, and then we have enough money for Marvin Jones. So Trevor Lawrence paired with his 2 best receivers, correlation with Mixon and McPherson, fading Joe Burrow and his passing offense entirely. This actually works out really well. I like it quite a bit. Might throw that out there in some tournaments tonight. All right, let's get that DraftKings sheet updated, and we'll get that going for you guys here momentarily. Again, thanks for all of you guys who are hanging out. I know that we always have better numbers and better or more interest on the days that actually have games, so I appreciate you hanging out with me this afternoon. The article is about half done on the website right now. I still have to go in and check some final numbers. There aren't really guys that we're waiting on in terms of injury. We already know that T. Higgins is out, so that's really the biggest piece of news. Knowing that Matthew Wright is going to be kicking for the Jaguars also helps me for final article content. So I'll make sure that that article is finished right after we get off of this stream here, and we can move forward and talk about the DraftKings slate. Again, if you guys have any questions in regards to 1v1s, 2v2s, strategies for this kind of thing, if you want me to run a specific player at captain for DraftKings, I would be more than happy to. And let's get this thing going. Okay, so I've looked at this a few times before, but I know that there are definitely different price tags for the different slates here. Obviously, I like DraftKings Showdown format a little bit more than the FanDuel Single Game format for one reason and one reason only, and it's because of the differentiation in price tags for the captain and what that does for the rest of the flex pricing. Like I said, Joe Burrow, probably the heaviest favorite to be the MVP, highest owned player tonight on FanDuel. On DraftKings, I would assume it's probably the same argument, but you can get Joe Mixon at 16,500 here in a fantastic spot as a home favorite running back. You can also get his weapons, Jamar Chase, 15-3. You can get Tyler Boyd, 11-1. I like this a lot. And just to give you an example of what this looks like, Joe Burrow, if you put him at captain, you can only use 6,500 for the rest of your players on average. If you were to put Tyler Boyd in that spot, 7,700. And Tyler Boyd obviously benefits with no T. Higgins, benefits with a very leaky Jacksonville slot corner, also benefits with the fact that it's a PPR site. So the more targets and the more receptions that he gets, the better his performance will be. And finally, the most important thing on DraftKings outside of the actual salaries and how they're changed is the fact that you want to try in Showdown to get as many people in your lineup that have the ability to get the 100-yard receiving bonus, the 100-yard rushing bonus, or the 300-yard passing bonus. And I think that Tyler Boyd checks off the 100-yard receiving bonus. Has not done it too many times to start the year. He actually hasn't done it at all. Got close in week 2. But I think this is a spot where you can rely on 13 to 14 points from Boyd here at your captain spot and feel pretty good about it. The one thing that I always preach on these streams every Thursday are you want to try to find skill players that can outscore their quarterbacks. And Tyler Boyd, if he is there in this spot, has the ability to outscore Joe Burrow. Marvin Jones has outscored Trevor Lawrence in 2 out of 3 weeks. And Jamar Chase will outscore Joe Burrow if he scores a touchdown tonight. You can call it right now from me. Auden Tate on DraftKings is a good play. I saw a few comments in the chat earlier about Auden Tate. We talked about him on FanDuel and how he's a dart throw on that site at 6K. Yeah, okay. That changes the game a little bit. He's 600 on DraftKings at the captain spot. Obviously, if you do this, you're taking a big risk. All he needs is one reception, and you're feeling great about the rest of your lineup. You get 9,800 per player from there, so you're able to roster at least one quarterback and two of his pass catchers on either side. You can pay up for a mix-in. You can do kind of whatever you want. If you want to get Auden Tate by himself at a flex spot, might not be a bad idea either, as it allows you 9,000, almost $10,000 per player, and you're kind of able to run the table with this one, right? If we fade Lawrence here, we could probably roster Tyler Boyd, captain, and then you're left with 8,000 per player. So Auden Tate gives you a lot of flexibility. I can't guarantee you he's going to get a target, but he might. Burrow has good odds for 19 plus rushing yards. That's in play. He, again, is very hesitant to run so far through 3 games. Hasn't reached it any time this season yet. So I would be iffy on that one. Yeah, the Auden Tate thing could unlock some stuff. Again, he needs, I don't know, I think he gets like 2 to 3 targets tonight, but I can't guarantee that. I was hoping we would see this a little bit last week, and maybe this is a blessing in disguise. This is enough, by the way. This is more than enough at his price tag. One reception for 14 yards to make you feel really, really good about the rest of your lineup if that's the case in the scenario you want to go. I was hoping that with T. Higgins out in this matchup, that Auden Tate would be more involved in the offense. Hopefully they do that today, because that would be a way to unlock some serious savings for the rest of your lineup. Yep, Flash that you is spot on. He could take a 0 and still be good. That is 100% correct. Rex got you 1 catch last week. Did he? Yeah, he did, didn't he? That's funny. Oh, somebody did show me that they cashed a Rex Burkhead lineup last week. He said P. Ryan over Tate. I mean, P. Ryan's fine. We haven't talked about him much on this at all. So we could talk about him quickly. I will tell you that I wouldn't feel comfortable getting 1.7 points from P. Ryan. He's just not like, this is whatever. This is fine. I believe this is when Joe Mixon had to get out of the game for a little bit, which could happen in this spot too. I'm not saying it won't, but I'm saying that, he is not the RB2 that we are accustomed to viewing in this game's or in this league's NFL, right? Like the age of the game right now, he is not the RB2 that you would think about. He is not going to take 20 to 30% of the workload. He's not even going to take 10% of the workload. He's not even going to take 5% of the workload. So you will be lucky if you get more than 5 touches from P. Ryan. He might pay off his price tag tonight. That's all I'm going to say. P. Ryan and Mixon together again. Exactly. I was much more worried, obviously, when Gio Bernard was in there. Now that we have P. Ryan, not something I'm worried about. 1 catch by Tate is more than likely than 20 yards by P. Ryan. That I agree with. Okay. Kai wants me to do Bengals defense. So we're going to do Bengals defensive captain. I expect that they will be sort of popular tonight, depending on where they're priced at. Wow. That's kind of a lot for defense. Yeah, that's a lot for a defense, guys. 5,600. Again, it's viable because we already know that, first of all, the Bengals defense has definitely played a little bit above their pay grade and skill level. But at the same time, they get the best matchup in the league right now against Lawrence, who's turned the ball over 3 times a game. So if you want exposure to Bengals, I will not hate you for it. If you end up, captain's one thing, but if you end up with $5,600 left over at your last flex spot and you want to have the Bengals in there, I'm not going to say no. I think that's a good play. They'll probably be I don't know. I would say probably around 15% owned tonight in tournaments. So you go with that, and you can go with a few other things, and you're setting yourself up for success. So let's see here. If we go with the Bengals defensive captain play, the first person that I want to plug in is Joe Mixon, who's extremely cheap at 11K. It's a really good price tag. Uh, Probably go a little bit less heavy on the pass catchers for the Bengals in this one. But again, you're looking for raw points, right? You're not going to roll Lawrence out in this build either. So in this scenario, if the Bengals go off completely, Lawrence scores less than 10 points in the game fantasy wise. You're probably putting James Robinson in there. Again, our favorite correlation play of the day, Evan McPherson at a insane price tag of 3,800, and then you're left with 87 per position. You don't need Joe Burrow in this lineup. You don't even need any quarterback in this lineup. But I want to try to get as much PPR points as possible. So I think the best way to do that is probably going this route right here, playing Tyler Boyd at your last spot. Yeah, the Bengals are kind of expensive on DraftKings. Not a bad thing. Again, they are definitely facing the most turnover-prone team in the league tonight at home. So I don't have a problem with it. I don't think that. So this is one bet that I have not placed yet tonight, but you can feel comfortable betting the under of Jacksonville's team total of 20. You can feel pretty good about that. Okay, guys, more scripts here. We can do, I don't know, 2 to 3 more. Again, thanks for hanging out. I appreciate it. Thanks to all of you who were able to be on the morning stream where we covered all 16 games from a betting perspective. That was fun. I always like doing that on Thursdays to kind of get the week started. And yeah, also want to note again that Dan Arnold's probably not going to play much of a role tonight. He just got traded like 3 days ago. So let's look at the dumpsters tonight and see if we can find anything down here that we like. Damn, it's sad seeing ETN down here at the bottom. Not playing Sample. Ogunbowale is the third running back. Not going to play him. Maybe even fourth. No. There's nobody down here outside of what's his nuts? Auden Tate. Yeah, nope. Johnson is like a really weird dart. He's not used at all. He was used more in the Chargers offense than the Jaguars. So, thoughts on Jacob Hollister? Does he go under owned for the targets? I mean, I think that he does go under owned tonight. I think people underestimate. I'm still trying to figure out the tight end situation for Jacksonville. Again, I don't think Dan Arnold gets much run here, and then you're kind of left with some pretty rough options. Manhurts, like I said, only has one reception on the year, and it was a touchdown, 22-yarder in the first game of the year. And Jacob Hollister sitting here at 1,000. I get it. I think that the targets are a little bit overblown. I don't think you're expecting 6 targets from him. Maybe 3 to 4 at the most. But again, O'Shaughnessy is not there. Dan Arnold's coming in with no run in the system. You might be able to get some run out of Hollister. So, chat, give me your opinions here. Would you want Hollister on DraftKings, or would you want a guy like Auden Tate? This could actually go for both sites because they're Hollister, like I said, is in that 7K range on FanDuel that you might need to use tonight if you were to go that way up top. Yeah, Trevor Lawrence loves his tight ends. He does. He certainly does. Yeah, I think I have to decide with Hollister too if I were to pick one or the other. Again, you could probably be just fine. Like don't put him at captain. I don't think that's the best option. Maybe in tournaments as a dart, that's fine. But yeah, he gives you I would argue just as much upside as Auden Tate gives you, with the ability that we actually know that he's running routes, so that's always helpful. Okay, we're going to do Marvin Jones Jr. at captain on DraftKings. He's got a good chance for the 100-yard bonus. He definitely does. All right, let's put him in there. Marvin Jones has not reached 100 yards yet. Could do it in this spot. Had a very tough matchup against Denver that he still scored a touchdown in. And obviously the targets are where you'd want them to be. Drafting him at captain would give us Trevor Lawrence at the MVP spot. Again, most of these, if we're going heavy on the Bengals pass catching unit, would force us into playing Joe Mixon over Joe Burrow, which I agree with. So I'm not um, saying anything bad about that situation. Just make sure when you're building tournaments, and I've done this a few times already, that we've faded Joe Burrow in some of these builds. Make sure that you don't fade him in all of your builds or the majority of them. I still think that he has a very good game. So in going with that, Jones, we probably want to stay away from the other pass catchers on the team. So I know that a lot, like, again, this just goes back to what I said several times already about there's just not very many guys in the player pool to go with. So you're going to be mixing and matching a lot of the same guys. You have 11,900. If you want to go with Burrows, or sorry, you have 5,900 per player. Never mind. So you can't play Burrow in this spot. If you did, you have to play Auden Tate, which is fine, but it's not great. So if you want to go Marvin Jones heavy, you have to fade DJ Chark. You have to fade Leviska Chanel. You can play a pass catcher from the Bengals still just to get the points upside here. So going a guy like Boyd works. You can also go with the Bengals defense in the case that Trevor Lawrence throws a couple picks in there. You can go with a cheapie in Jacob Hollister and just hoping that he doesn't get in the end zone. Because if Hollister gets in the end zone, it might not be a deal breaker with a Jones captain, but it would certainly put you at a higher risk of losing that first place spot. And so what we're doing here, guys, is we're trying to build first place teams. And we're not trying to just min cash. So if you put Jones in there, you want to have him score all the touchdowns for that team. Hollister the price point definitely helps, right? But what's the upside here? Probably one touchdown, maybe 12 DraftKings points. So it doesn't break you if he scores a touchdown, but it certainly wouldn't. It would be a little bit riskier, and there'd be less of a percentage that you would actually come away with the winner there. And then I would conclude with Jamar Chase in this build. So you can do pretty much whatever you want tonight. I think the way that people are going to go is they're going to just go this route. And I think that this is the wrong way of doing things tonight. And if you want me to explain further, I can. The reason that I don't really like this approach on DraftKings is that both of these quarterbacks have not reached their potential in terms of fantasy production. We just saw that Trevor Lawrence on DraftKings, he hit the 300-yard bonus once. This was a very good game for him. I'm not going to say anything bad about it. But when you get to these games, certainly this matchup is awful. It's very tough. He threw under 40% or under 45% and ended with 8 points and 11 points. When you're talking about DraftKings, where it's not as touchdown dependent, you have guys like James Robinson, Marvin Jones, these guys are going to give you the points per dollar upside along with the 100-yard bonus upside. And there could be a real scenario where Trevor Lawrence throws for 250 yards tonight and scores 0 touchdowns, but his weapons go absolutely nuclear because they get the 100-yard bonus and they have the point per reception totals for their respective positions. So for me, I'm always trying to focus again on making sure that my skill player outscores my quarterback. And I think that Boyd is able to do that. I think Marvin Jones is able to do that. I think DJ Chark, Jamar Chase, Joe Mixon, James Robinson, Even Leviska. I think that all 7 or 8 of those guys can outscore their respective quarterbacks tonight. And that's why I think that going Joe Burrow at captain is a fish play at the very least. Okay, guys, we're going to run one more scenario on DraftKings tonight, or for this afternoon, and we are going to call this stream a day. So who's it going to be? What's the scenario we want today? Give me a good one. Give me one that we haven't seen yet. We have a lot of Joe Mixon. We've had a lot of Marvin Jones. We've had a lot of pass catching options for the Jacksonville Jaguars. So give me something different here. I know Astro's got something cooking up his sleeve. There it is. Bengals shutout. Okay. We'll do the Bengals and the Robinson one, and then we'll call it a day. All right. Bengals shutout. Yep, comment from the chat from OU's. Our broadcasts are to comment, you have to be a sub. You can watch for free, but you have to be a sub if you want to comment. Here comes yeah, there you go, guys. There we go. That's what I'm talking about. Maybe we'll take more than just one. Okay, let's do Bengals shutout first. For Bengals shutout, I would say the best option, and the thing on DraftKings that is cool about all of this is that you get shutout points. So if you had the Bills in week 2, or if you had the Broncos in week 3, you got shutout points for your defense on DraftKings, which is an extra couple, which will do a lot for you if you roster them at the captain spot. So let's do that. Let's do Joe Mixon. Let's do McPherson again. And then we're kind of left with some interesting plays. We have to roster one Jacksonville player, and it can't be the kicker because that would mean that they would score points. And I don't want it to be Lawrence because what's the upside there? If they're shut out, he probably doesn't score more than 8 DraftKings points, which you can get all of that from James Robinson and him not scoring at all. So let's put in Robinson here. Let's also put in, now we have to start thinking about what guys we want to target from a point per dollar DraftKings scoring type of situation. If the Bengals are up top, we don't have to worry about who we're playing or fading on the offense for the Bengals. Let's just see if we can jam in. We aren't going to be able to jam in Chase and Boyd, but let's go with Chase and see what we got left. Yeah, I don't love that. So let's see what we got here. Still don't like it, but I think that you can go Marvin Jones. So this would be the example for Bengals shutout with Joe Mixon there, McPherson there. James Robinson has one of the, yeah, I mean, James Robinson and Marvin Jones both are probably the beneficiaries of a shutout performance where they're the top 2 scoring on the Jacksonville Jaguars in this situation. Okay. Will wants me to do double kicker, double defense. I'll do you one. I'm not going to do Bengals, or I'm not going to do Jaguars defense, but I'll give you Bengals defense and both kickers. In that scenario, so Bengals defense would certainly hurt when the Jacksonville kicker does his job. So I don't know if I necessarily want to put either of those at captain. So what we'll do is we'll put Mixon there. We'll put the Bengals. We'll roster both kickers once I find what's his face. Did they add the other kicker yet in the player pool? I don't think they did. Chad, am I wrong here? I don't think that they added the other kicker yet to the player pool. Anyway, we'll do this for now. We'll throw the Jaguars defense in just for Will. Wherever they are. Okay. I would not, I wouldn't suggest this by any means, but if Joe Burrow throws 2 interceptions, 3 interceptions, gets sacked a couple times, this could pay off at 3K. And then we have 10,500 per player. Uh, yeah. Again, it's kind of gross, right? I wish we had the other. If we had the other kicker opportunity, we could play Joe Burrow instead. Joe Mixon injury in the first quarter. We obviously can't ever bank on injuries, but in that respect, if you want to go that route, this is how Andy Holloway of the Fantasy Footballers won the Millionaire Maker last week when Christian McCaffrey got hurt. He did not play Chuba Hubbard in the captain slot. He used him as a flex option. So if you want to go that route, and again, we never try to project people being injured in the game, but you can always hedge stuff by going this way. You would want P. Ryan there. And with him being captain, you already have so much leverage on the field that's going to go Joe Mixon. So you can play Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase in this build. And then you can go run it back with Marvin Jones. And that scared the crap out of me. You guys definitely saw me twitch there. What's going on? Thank you so much, Astro. My volume is so loud in my headphones right now, and I totally forgot. I usually try to hype myself up with the music at the beginning and end of the stream to get myself going for this, and it was very quiet for like an hour and 20 minutes. Thank you, Astro, for waking me up. I don't need another cup of coffee now. Yeah, okay. Let's let's go. I appreciate you, my man. Uh, oh, Yuis, thank you. Oh, that's the guy that just asked about the sub-only question. Okay, so you can definitely talk in the chat now if you want. Okay, so if P Ryan is here, we can definitely do a few things. So we can't play Mixon, obviously. Again, I'm so far off of Trevor Lawrence in this game, it's kind of ridiculous, but I have to remember that like obviously he's in play for tournaments still. James Robinson is in play. I would like what we saw last week was really good from him. Like getting 6 targets out of the backfield is great for 46 yards. That gives you 10 points on DraftKings, which is awesome. However, I mean, he probably is going to be slated to do that again here. And if he does, and if he gets that work, he probably outscores Trevor Lawrence. So give me James here. And then you're kind of left with no man's land a little bit. But again, you don't have to spend all your money on this game. So normally I would never suggest that. But in this game, you can certainly save most of your salary on either site. So you can go Tyler Boyd, you can go DJ Chark. So P Ryan's price is so low that no one's going to do this at captain this week or today. Okay, I think that I got to most of them. Maybe I need one more. Oh, here he is. Robinson, 2 touchdowns, MVP. Robinson, 2 touchdowns, MVP. Also, friendly reminder that today is the last day of Subtober or September. That means that you can get subs a little bit cheaper if you want to go that route. All right, let's go with James Robinson, 2 touchdowns. And then we'll call this thing a day. 14,100 at the captain spot. You're fading the passing game for this team, so you're fading Lawrence, you're fading Marvin Jones, you're fading Chark and Chanel. That means that if James Robinson has a big game, you would think that they'd be up by at least 1 score, which would mean that Joe Burrow would have to come back with a passing attack. You can fade Joe Mixon in this build if you choose to go that route. We're left with 65 or 6,000 per player, so we have to choose between. We don't have to choose, but I would like this kind of puts you in a bind, right? Like this is possible. You can do this, and actually, let's do it 2 routes. We'll do one route with Jamar Chase and Tyler Boyd in it, and then one route without. So in this one, you can go with the kicker again. I'm using this guy so much, and I think that he is probably one of the best plays under 4K or under 5K if you want to go that far. And then you can go with a Carlos Hyde as the handcuff option. Wouldn't suggest that because that would kind of defeat the purpose of the James Robinson play up at the top. You can go with Jacob Hollister here and save 1900 or leave 1900 on the table. You can go with P. Ryan if you really wanted to, but again, not the best idea. Auden Tate is sitting down here too. So there's a lot of situations that you can do with this build. Maybe we don't have to necessarily choose one or the other here. Maybe we just roll this out as it is. Uh, because the only other options that I would want in this scenario would probably be like a Marvin Jones, just for the PPR upside. And then you're forced to go with, you can still do this, and then you can do kind of whatever you want. So James Robinson with a Joe Burrow passing attack is not a bad option as well. Okay, I think this thing is a wrap, guys. Any last questions for tonight? Any last scenarios you want me to run through? If we get one in the next 30 seconds, I will run that. Otherwise, we're going to wrap this baby up. Quite frankly asks, anyone think Agnew gets any love after that return last week? So Agnew already is special teams, like he is the GOAT of special teams on that team right now. I highly doubt that that's going to transfer into him being a wide receiver in wide receiver 3 sets. They already kind of have that figured out. They also have brought in another tight end, so it's another pass catching option that Lawrence has. I would stay away from Agnew. The one upside that he does bring is the ability to return kicks, but you only get 6 points. You don't get yardage for that. All right, we're going to switch back to the screen here, and we will just chat the next couple minutes if you guys have any questions. Yeah, I feel good about tonight too. No problem, Master. Thank you for the sub earlier. Thanks, guys. I appreciate the kind words. For those of you who came in late or are missing this news, I have won every single slate, whether it be single game showdown or main slate, every single one since last Sunday night. So we've won 10 in a row, and we're looking for 12 tonight, as we would get wins on FanDuel and DraftKings if we did that. So if that all goes well and all goes according to plan, I think we'll be at the top of the leaderboards again tonight and looking to kick ass on Sunday to get this thing really going. Because once we start getting on a heater, it's really hard for things to fall off the rails. So I appreciate you all hanging out. Again, one last thing. If you would like and are not subscribed to the NFL All Access package, remember it's all access. So not cash, not GPP, all access. You can get 50% off of this week, of your first week, for the week here using the code StrongSide. That's all one word, StrongSide at checkout. Again, that's StrongSide. Gives you 50% off the entire all access package for your first week. That applies to weekly and monthly subscriptions. So if you're not on board and if you're just watching for free, that's fine. But if you want some additional information behind the paywall for tonight, if you want a detailed article and podcast and lineups for like every single slate over the weekend, then that's the place to go. So if you missed this stream earlier, if you want to watch it back later, all of this stuff is up in the catalog on our YouTube page at RotoRadar-Daily Fantasy Sports. I have an article to finish, and I have an MLB slate to research, so I'm going to get out of here. This will be up on Twitch a little bit later. And as always, good afternoon and good skill.